What's the sort of story behind the name Hela?
Me and Aditya was watching a movie and it was, I think, Troy's sister. We were filling up the MCF form, we use that name. In Pune, we have a concrete manufacturing unit, which is 100% women oriented.
So I assume that most of what we are seeing in this particular room
would be used.
Would be all
yeah,
Hela products. And you'll have it no other way. If you could throw a light on how current financial year has been.
I think last year our numbers are public. We did around about
Thank you so much, Souvik, for taking time out for this chat. It's an absolute pleasure to have you. So we will spend time during the course of the next 1 hour or so in trying to get to know the company a little bit better. But before we get there, it'd be great if we can start with a little bit about yourself, your background. And while you're at it, we would have loved to have Aditya also. Maybe you can spend a little bit time talking about him as well.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I did my. I've been mainly spent a lot of my time in Bombay, but I did a lot of my early schooling in Calcutta, and shifted to Bombay post my 10th. And since then, I've been here. I did my graduation and my CA from Bombay. Worked for construction companies. Aditya and me have known each other from 20 plus years. I think we started in 2000. When we met in around 2001-2 when I shifted to Bombay. And since then, we've almost known each other since then for last 20 plus years. And Aditya's background is more entrepreneurial. He spent a lot of his time building distribution channels for cement companies, steel companies in India as an entrepreneurial role. And my background, my profile was more, I was working for construction companies in a more initially financial functions and slowly shifted to more commercial roles. And I think we had a common interest in the industry because we both sort of operate in a similar industry, but building materials / infrastructure construction. And we so when I wanted to start up and I wanted to sort of build something on my own, it became a natural to discuss with him what he thought on that, on the idea, how we could execute, and we sort of started together. So that was how that's how we sort of came together. But before that also we've known each other for a long time. Yeah.
So barring your respective experience in the particular field, what was sort of that one aha moment, so to speak, or what sort of sparked the idea of building this franchise?
Yeah, so the initial idea behind Infra.Market was what we saw globally, and while it wasn't a like for like, but we saw a lot of global. You saw Home Depot globally, and you saw a lot of global platforms which were building a end-to-end comprehensive building material solution. But they were more marketplaces. So they were essentially, even though they have their own brands, they are still primarily marketplace, which means that they provide a store or a supply chain solution where someone can go in and buy multi-products. Like you can walk into a store and buy. So we just felt that in 2016 when we started, at least, I think the one thing that we really understood was that in India, majority companies were selling a product. They were not selling a service. They were not selling that you come in here and you buy multiple products from us and we are going to provide you a solution around your entire construction needs. It was mainly, I am one of the largest manufacturers of cement, buy cement from me, or I am one of the largest manufacturers of steel, buy steel from me, or paint from me, or whatever. They were all focused on a category. And that was one sort of moment that sort of came to us, that look, there is this potential to build out a horizontal play where globally it has happened. Why not in India, that people buy multiple products from us? Why not? Why? And we felt that while there were large incumbents in single product categories, there still was that room to create a horizontal play across. The second thing that sort of stuck to us was India was unique in the sense that you couldn't build marketplaces in India, in building materials, we felt, because a lot of it, India valued building material brands. So India is unique. If you go to watch an IPL event, you go to watch a cricket match, you will see majority of the ad spend with building material companies. You will find all the cement companies there, all the steel companies there, paint companies, hardware companies. You don't realize it till when you go globally, you see that's hardly the case. You go to a global sports event, a global concert, you will not find multinational cement companies and steel companies advertising, because These are not typically consumer categories.
Right.
Yeah, you and I don't buy cement or steel. So yet in India it's very unique because I think India inherently is slightly low trust in a sense that people value the brand
Right.
and would pay a premium for the brand. So we realized that while we want to build a marketplace, we need to even initially own the brands because the profit pool was in the brand. So that's the second thought process. The third was in most categories in India, which are upcoming categories, I would say, which are categories where the construction cycle is moving from an older product to a newer product. And we found that a large part of the market is unbranded local players dominating the market. And there's a global trend or a sort of even an Indian trend where people want to buy branded products, right? People don't want to buy unbranded products anymore. It's happened across sectors. So we felt, why can't we do to building materials what has been done to FMCGs for so long, where someone's created a distribution channel and then given the consumer multiple options around the same product, different product categories. And why only stick to a category? That's how we started. We said there are large unbranded players. We take some market share from some of these guys and eventually build out a horizontal play. That was the thought process behind starting Infra.Market effectively. And we sort of, instead of as a pure marketplace, we hence started this like a house of brand concept that we own the brands.
Sure.
And today, if you look at every building material company, large building material company, they've either started a platform similar to us on their own,
Right.
and there have been recent announcements of players who are venturing, or they've at least started a second or third product.
Sure.
So you've had the large paint companies going into lifestyle or going into modular kitchen. You have large cement companies going into paint, and which is now something that the industry recognizes, because the industry understands that if there is a shopkeeper selling one product of mine, why will he not sell a second product? He's going to sell the second product of someone else's.
Right.
Why don't I capture the company? Or if there is a real estate company which is constructing a project, if he's buying one from me, why won't he buy the second? I think companies have sort of grabbed that. So at least that has removed that question we always got from people early on, that will people buy multiple products from the same company? And so these 2-3 things sort of put together us starting what we did at that time.
Sure, got it. You spoke about 2016 and, so I'm assuming from that vision at the beginning to now, things would have evolved, right? How you saw it when you started. So can you talk about some of those things that sort of changed or, you sort of adapted as you went along?
So first, I think one of the core things that changed when we started in 2016, the thought process was that we will build out the supply chain. Because at that time, some companies had already existed which were pure price discovery platforms. So you could come in, someone else would come in, they could search, how do I buy paint near me or concrete near me, as a B2B price discovery platforms. We realized that doesn't work eventually, because we understood that just merely a platform which connects the buyer and the seller doesn't work, because eventually you have to also have the logistics done, the movement of goods done, which is broken in multiple parts in India, right? So the infrastructure itself has to first to get up. It's not like an ecosystem. Like today, you could build a great fintech platform on the top of UPI, but you couldn't do that a couple of decades ago, right? You didn't have that basic platform. So in India, if you want to develop a building material platform, if you don't have your logistics, then you can connect. But if the supplier tomorrow doesn't, supply to the customer, the experience is broken. Effectively, you will not solve for anything. So we realized that has to get built. We eventually realized that a lot of our customers in India, at least when we started, we thought we will build this asset-light platform where we will go to smaller manufacturers who who were not full capacity utilization, and tell them to manufacture under our brand, and we'll eventually sell under our brand. We realized very quickly that a lot of the customers or the distribution channel that works, which includes retailers, distributors, dealers, wants your skin in the game, wants to see you putting in your money on manufacturing. Because at the end of the day, they look at us like a startup who's there. If you're getting a product manufactured from someone else and just merely selling it in the channel, they also realize that you've got no skin in the game. If things don't work, you can easily go out, right? So I think 2 things that eventually worked out is what we realized is you need to have own manufacturing. You need to build your own infra. And the third thing was, we need to look at product categories which followed a particular path. For example, we started with concrete. The reason we started with concrete was it was the first product required in construction. Then we started with walling, that is, once you've done the concrete, you do the walls. So we sort of followed a sequence so that it made it easier for us to do that cross-selling opportunity. But I think the two core things was doing your own logistics and supply chain and putting up some own manufacturing are the two core things that we sort of, which were different from where we eventually thought about this business initially. We didn't think about this as where we will do a lot of heavy lifting around manufacturing and supply chain, which eventually it's sort of over the last few years, it is sort of, a lot of it also happened during COVID because you started, Indian marketplaces do great, at least B2B marketplaces, where the supply exceeds the demand. If the supply is more and the demand is very limited, then your core proposition, value proposition as a marketplace is to get that demand to the right supplier. And you basically, your profit margin is generated by a supplier's point of view. You get a part of his pie.
Right.
During COVID, what started happening was a lot of the supply started getting squeezed out, raw material shortage and everything. And the demand started exceeding the supply.
Right.
When that happens, what started happening was the people who had the demand would eventually directly reach out to the suppliers. Right. And there was no value proposition left for a marketplace because the supplier then was in a position of strength. We at least took a call that in a multi-decade journey that India is going to have, construction, infra is going to go through multiple phases where the demand will exceed the supply. This is because huge amount of building construction is going to get done in India. More airports are getting built today than ever. So building materials will go through various building materials will go through those phases where demand will exceed supply. And hence it's critical for us to build our own supply networks to not get squeezed out. Eventually those things sort of changed as things in the macroeconomically changed. We sort of took calls. So I think our own manufacturing was the biggest takeaway that we took in the biggest change in the journey.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you spoke about construction, and the first point in the journey, and therefore looking at concrete. And it's quite interesting because when I was looking at the group as a whole, and like how do you guys sort of position yourselves, and you've spoken about construction solutions as a platform, and now there's B2B, started off with B2B, but I think now
retail and B2B, yes.
So is it something like sort of foundation to finishing and everything else in between, or how do you sort of in that sense pitch or articulate this group to?
Yeah, so idea is that look, we typically divide into basically what we call in R is basically civil, and then you have lifestyle sort of finishing products and then lifestyle products. So we don't want to restrict ourselves to just foundation to finishing. We eventually want to build everything that a person would need to build around home, right? So that could include constructing your home when you need concrete, to eventually furnishing your home through curtains, or we are today doing a lot of electrical goods, so we do electrical appliances. So eventually the idea is to build an entire solution around the home, that whether it's a real estate developer constructing a home, to eventually the consumer walking into the home, we want to be able to provide an entire suite of products around that. That's the thought process. Yes.
Sure. And in this sort of journey, like I was mentioning, so the B2B to retail shift has happened. So how much today is your focus on the retail side of things? Because you mentioned about owning the brand and building the trust with the consumer.
Yeah.
And sort of has been a focus shift, or are you sort of prioritizing any differently?
No, so there has been a focus on retail, but that's primarily because of how inherently the industry, certain products get sold more in retail than B2B. Now, if you're going to sell paint, it's primarily going to get sold in retail channels and not so much in B2B in India.
Right.
But if you're going to sell concrete, it's going to get, no matter how much push you do in retail, it's a product that is sold primarily B2B. Right. So it's often dominated by the product. Right. And no matter how much you want to push, you can't push it. The difference happened is that when we started this journey, we started products like concrete and walling, and then product categories which were more B2B.
Right.
inherently that B2B was a channel that you would sell them under. And now as we sort of have scaled up to where we are, we've launched tiles, we're one of the largest manufacturers in India. We've gone into paint, we've gone into categories like appliances, which eventually will get sold via B2C more than B2B. And that's the function of how that product moves and less a function of how we want to ship it. Yes, we want to build consumer sort of appeal, but that is determined more by the product. So, but at the moment, it's like a sort of a 20% odd of our business. I think once we have an entire gamut of products and certain products are new, so as they sort of mature, my understanding is this should be around about 1/3 to 40% is what we eventually think this business will land up at. But B2B will still be the dominant part of the business in the long run also.
And you spoke about other products, so quite clearly, your M&A has been a pretty clear focus, for the company. And several names, but RDC and Shalimar come to mind. So what has been sort of the approach behind these acquisitions, and are there any other such opportunities you're looking at, or is there some degree of stability there on that side, and you're not looking at doing that in the near future?
So there are two separate transactions, RDC and Shalimar, that you said, and we've done a couple more acquisitions around tiles. But RDC, the thought process. See, I'll have to give some context on concrete for that. So concrete, which RDC was into now, and we also did concrete independently before we acquired RDC. Concrete in India is an extremely fragmented market. India primarily has always bought more dry cement. So India does around about $40 billion of dry cement. That dry cement, you and I, when we build our house, we buy the cement, we mix it with water, chemicals, other products, and we then do the concreting. That's typically how India has done. And even larger projects, only larger projects have bought concrete for a long period of time. So concrete penetration in India when we sort of started would be around 15-20%. So of the 40 billion, around 6 to 8 billion would be concrete, right? And even that, in that, brands were hardly present. It was fairly fragmented local manufacturers. Then what we saw happening is that when you want to mix and use at site level, which is called site mix, you buy concrete, cement and you mix by hand. That is viable in India due to three reasons. India's lack of focus on any environmental benefits out of concrete compared to cement. Second, it wasn't a priority area. Second, India had the availability of very cheap labor, right? So if it took time or if it took a lot of labor to mix, it was still viable, it was still cost effective. And third is that a lot of tier 2, tier 3 India was not vertical. So you had G+4, G+5, G+7, where you could do this, you could buy, mix, people build independent homes. A lot of that has changed in the last 3 years. Concrete today has a growth rate double that of cement in India. So concrete adoption has gone up to 25% of cement. Globally, that's as high as 70%.
Right.
So India is sort of below that dynamics. The reason it is as India has is one, you can see all the large construction companies CEOs put out, labor cost has gone through the roof for construction. Labor availability is not there.
Right.
Second, India in tier 2 is getting more and more vertical.
Right.
So as India gets more vertical, if you're building a G+20, you can't buy cement and mix by hand. Right? There's not enough time.
Sure.
And third, concrete is much more environmentally friendly product than cement because you use a lot of waste materials in manufacturing concrete in the manufacturing process. So ready-mix concrete, which we sell, we saw a great opportunity in that growth. So RDC we acquired around December 2021. They had just had a COVID year, so it was owned by a PE fund who wanted to exit for a long period of time. And we felt, like I said, we wanted to get into manufacturing. We did concrete, but we did it under a pure play third-party manufacturing model where other people manufactured for us or we leased in factories that we operated. And we felt that getting the right manufacturing expertise, one way would be to build it in-house. Second, we felt it was a great opportunity to buy an asset like RDC because it already had 50 odd manufacturing units of its own, and then use that manufacturing expertise that they have built to further put up new manufacturing units. Today we own around 250 manufacturing units across India in concrete. Of that we own around 120 under RDC, and 120 we have on our own. And the idea was very simple. There was which a category which has seen a lot of global adoption, and India was catching up. The macroeconomic benefits were clear in that concrete was going to grow. Indian construction was in a multi-decade sort of growth run, and we saw that coming back after the government sort of pushed post-COVID. We saw that there was renewed spending on construction, and it was a category which was a new age category in that relative term, that it was sort of very fragmented, local players, not very concentrated, and we just felt it was the right asset to acquire at that time. So concrete RDC acquisition was done, one, because of the concrete sort of, we wanted to get to leadership in concrete. Second, that manufacturing capabilities they had. Shalimar, we acquired a paint company primarily because we wanted to start getting into consumer categories. We wanted to get access to retail shops where Shalimar was selling paint. We could sell our other products. We were selling other products where we could plug in Shalimar. For example, there's a shop which sells my tiles. Can I plug in paint also? That was a thought process. Obviously, last year wasn't great for the paint company, but they have actually still grown a lot, Shalimar, because of overall sort of a lot of competition increasing in the industry. But we continue to believe in that company. We continue to sort of work on that and sort of work towards scaling up the paint business. So our acquisition strategy around RDC was around manufacturing, but our acquisition strategy around Shalimar was to understand the consumer business a little more.
Sure.
How do we sort of plug in the retail? How do we get into retail? How do we sell multi-products in retail? Which is the category we should enter with? And post that, we've acquired some tile manufacturing companies. Again, the acquisition there has been primarily focused on that we already have a lot of revenue in tiles, but a lot of sales that we do to dealer stores, retailer stores, B2B clients who buy concrete from us also buy tiles from us. But we didn't have manufacturing at the back end. And we felt it was critical to get some manufacturing because we didn't want a situation where something changes, suddenly manufacturing becomes scarce, and we cannot go back and buy from them. So, for example, so we decided to buy some manufacturing units, so we did some acquisitions there. But our acquisition strategy is very specific to what are the gaps we want to fill.
Right.
Are we looking to fill manufacturing gap, which was happened with RDC and tiles? Are we looking to fill the brand gap, which happened with Shalimar? So it has to be very clearly something that we feel will take us a lot of time to build organically, and we would like to instead do it inorganically and try and sort of close that. Or if something like that comes up, we continue to remain open to inorganic opportunities. At this moment, we don't have anything very clear right now with us. So we will, at the moment, we're not evaluating anything very aggressively in acquisition, but if something comes up that fits a category we want to enter, it has something, they have expertise in something which we think we cannot build or will take a lot of time to build organically, then we'll evaluate that. That's the thought process.
Sure. Yeah. Got it. So, shifting the focus a little bit to the tech side of things, from the outside, it may appear that, okay, this is into construction or in that sort of category, and beyond the obvious, use cases of technology, how is sort of, tech playing a role? And, I would like you to sort of throw light on the non-obvious ones, right? Which is sort of helping you optimize, say, across the supply chain, or on the manufacturing side of things. So certain such aspects of technology orientation will help.
So I'll tell you, we've been last 4 years, 5 years. We today deliver more than 10,000 shipments of concrete, maybe daily, right? And today, all of the shipments reach the customer have to reach the customer between a 90 to 120 minute, 1.5 hour, 2 hour timeline. It's because concrete eventually is perishable in the sense that you can't have it for too long, otherwise it freezes, right? Or it sort of. So you have a 2 hour timeline, it has to get utilized, a 1.5 timeline, you have to reach the site. And for example, if someone's building a real estate site in, say, Bombay or in the heart of Bangalore, and they need 20 shipments that day, you can't send 20 shipments at one go because he can't unload 20 shipments at one go. Each shipment will take some time and the last vehicle will be waiting for 2 hours. So you have to send them in sequence. Now, you have to do this in delivering something in 90 minutes to an hour or 2 hours in complex cities like Bangalore, Bombay, traffic. with low entries, and which is, it's not a, you're not delivering a food parcel, you're delivering a 20-ton truck,
Right.
and then you deliver them in sequence.
Right.
I think if you're not building the tech around supply chain there, it's impossible to function. It's impossible because effectively every order that comes in has to get broken up into multiple shipments across multiple manufacturing units, and they all have to then converge, and they all have to come in that sequence and come to at a project site, so the customer gets a seamless experience. That is where technology plays a very key role for us. So for example, if there is a Bangalore order that is there, or a Bombay order that is there, every order has to get split across 10 manufacturing units in that city, near that city, and then each plant will know how many shipments I am doing, and I know which sequence I have to supply at. So if I am the 4th truck, I have to be half an hour after the 3rd truck. I have to leave for my plant, depending on the distance. And all that has to be sequenced out. All that is automated. You can't do it manually across 10,000 shipments daily, right? So I think that level of complexity in supply chain, and the level of data we need to mine on customers. For example, a customer bought concrete today. What happens? So they did a slab today. They'll do columns. Then after 20 odd days, they'll do a slab again. You have to keep understanding. Otherwise, if you're not tracking that at the back end, if my sales team doesn't get help from my own tech, that look, the customer placed an order 20 days back. If he's not placing an order again with you, the order has gone to someone else, right? Because if a customer is constructing a building, unless something happens, he will place an order every day or every 20 days to construct the building, right? Then if the customer has bought concrete, why is he not buying blocks from you? Because where he's constructing the wall, or why is he buying blocks lesser quantity than he should be? Because by the time you supply one product, you know what the overall building sort of size is, right? I think that data around projects, how much supply they will need over the next 3-4 years, the richness of data that we have is unparalleled to any of the most building metal companies, because they're not supplying multi-products.
Right.
And concrete as a category is unique in the sense it's a direct category. We don't go via dealers. So it's direct supply from us to client. So we get direct access to the client. I think that level of that is where I think those are two areas. Obviously, there are multiple areas tech works around, but those are two areas where our sort of integration with the tech teams, tech that we've built is extremely critical, because if we are not building cross-selling opportunities, we effectively are trying to run 10 different companies in one. So if you are running, like you guys run a platform, right? So I'm saying, if you're running a platform and all 10 verticals work in silos, right, and they don't talk to each other. So if my concrete team goes and sells concrete and shuts off, and my block team has to independently search for a client, and the cross-sell is not happening, then I'm going to be inefficient because to a company who's doing only one of them. And I'm anyway competing in each category with single companies. So until I build that efficiency layer, then I'm always going to be a second rung, third rung player, but I'm never going to have that efficiency compared to the large players. That is where we are at. Yeah.
Got it. And have you seen any artificial intelligence use cases come alive in the last few months or years?
No, we've seen mainly around revenue, sales, right, because basically our understanding around which project will require what material at what time, sure, based on the project understanding, based on what has been the historical that the company has been. But that's our sales teams have to get equipped with enough support around which are the clients which they need to keep tapping into, because there is a requirement that should be coming up.
Sure.
That's the typical thing.
Got it. We'll move to numbers next in this particular section. So, if you could throw a light on how the current financial year has been, both at a group level and also maybe for the benefit of our viewers at a Hella Chemical and RDC level, and how sort of you are looking at ending the year.
I think we will continue to grow over last year. So I think last year our numbers are public. We did around about 14,000 crores revenue, right, and 1,000 crore EBITDA. Right. RDC I think has done fantastically well. We've, right, grown from 40 plants to around about 120 odd plants, right, in RDC. Right. It's an extremely highly profitable, high cash flow generating business. Chemical is more backward integration for us, where we supply raw material to a lot of our suppliers who manufacture construction chemicals for us, a lot of our suppliers who manufacture tiling for us. We supply them raw materials. So it's a business that keeps growing based on how Infra.Market overall grows. The margin profile there is lower because it's a more distribution-led business. We are not into manufacturing there yet in that categories, but that business is extremely well. It's a very ring-fenced business because it's effectively supplying primarily to people who are then supplying to Infra.Market in the sense or partners of Infra.Market. So the business keeps growing based on how Infra.Market volumes.
So, little bit on the risks and challenges side, right? So you spoke about competition. Maybe that's some place where we can start. So I'm assuming at a group level, there's there's hardly seems to be anybody who's gone as horizontal as you have.
No, but there are companies are like for example, you have to just go through there's a platform called Birla Pivot that Grasim launched, which is horizontal tiles, everything. And then at the back end, they're doing manufacturing and paint. That day, we saw them come out with that they're going into wires and cables.
Right.
And if you look at the language they've used, and there's an article today on that by, I think, Ken, that they're trying to build a comprehensive solution around building materials. I think it's very clear focus there on building. So I think people are some of them are going to go. They may not have gone now, but I think if you give them a couple of years, you will see some people there. But I don't think we are competing. So I'll tell you, let's look at tiles. So let's look at any category which is sort of tiles. India was a net importer in 2018. Post the Russia-Ukraine crisis, energy crisis, prices going up. India is now a net exporter. One of the largest export hubs is Morbi. If you look at tiles overall market in India, it's around about $8 billion, give or take, right? So around 70,000 crores market. All the large brands put together, all the big brands are less than 20,000 crores put together. So out of a 70,000 crore market, if you add all the brands who are selling, which you and I know of who do advertisements, they're not more than 20,000 crores put together. 50,000 crores is local manufacturers no one has heard of. Right? Concrete, right? For $10 billion market, expected to go up to $20 billion. In the $10 billion market, all the cement brands put together, including us, do $1.5 billion. 8.5 is local players. 85% of the market is by local players. So we're not going to compete. I don't think we're going to compete with each other. I think what is going to happen is a lot of the unbranded manufacturing market is going to shift to the people who are trying to build new brands. And it's happened across categories. So it's going to happen, and it's happening globally. So I'm not sure whether it's a competition between us and someone else building a platform. I think it's about us trying to build that where we eventually show the customer the value proposition is shifting from unbranded to branded. And eventually that's going to happen, and then people will want to buy multi-products from one place, and eventually that's the market. So it's going to be an overall industry shift, we believe, over the years to come, and not going to be direct competition between two people trying to build a platform. B2B is not going to be a winner-takes-all market anyway. Right? It's not unlike B2C.
Got it. Yeah. But this first mover advantage that you've sort of had, right, and you have a little bit of a lead over the others.
I don't think it's about the lead. Right. I agree with you. We've had an advantage of first mover in a sense. Right. I think it's about, as a company, having the DNA to be a multi-product, multi-channel platform, and that's how we started. We are not a cement company trying to get into wires or paint, and we're not a paint company trying to get into modular kitchen. We wanted to build a comprehensive building material solution, and our every decision has been towards that. Most other companies, some of the companies who are today going in, were great in one category and have decided to start another category to involve. And eventually that will lead to a comprehensive solution. We've had a focus very clear from day zero. I want to work with a real estate developer. I want to sell him one product, second, third, fourth. I want to supply across. There are projects today in India where we supplied concrete, and today we are doing paint. So last finishing. Right. So, and we've supplied 3-4 products in between. So I think the focus area is for us has always been to build a comprehensive solution. And every decision we take today and every thought process in the entire company that we have built is focused around that. Right. Whereas I think other people who are going that path, while we may not compete with each other, are also going to realize that building independent verticals is possible, but eventually the synergy that exists between takes a lot of time and effort beyond just building those verticals out.
Got it. Yeah. And in terms of Shalimar, for example, right? So there's obviously a legacy,
Yeah.
leader in that space. So and while is the same true for that particular category also?
Yeah, it continues.
Right.
So, for example, like I gave, so for example, we supplied concrete to some metro projects in India, concrete to some real estate projects in India. Where now we got Shalimar approved, we are going to supply paint. That was the category Shalimar was never looking at. They were never looking at B2B real estate paint supply. That's a new category for them. It took us a couple of years to get it in. But it started. So we'll see substantial growth there. So it's those are because every product that we've got into, our thought process is that. So when we buy RDC, our thought process is how can Shalimar benefit from RDC? Or when we buy Shalimar, again, how will RDC benefit from Shalimar? So I think for us, it's always been that multi-product approach. I think that will differentiate us from everyone else trying to build it, because everyone else trying to build it are building them as independent silos within an organization. So that their paint company does not speak to their tiles company. It's two different platforms or two different companies operating, and it's a platform because it has all the product, but still two different companies operating. For us, it's always been one platform. I think that approach is very different.
Got it.
Yeah.
And from a we were talking about, so we spoke about competition. So from a regulatory standpoint, are there any current challenges that you are seeing, or any risks that you foresee that will sort of impact your business?
I think the last few years, the regulatory improvement has only benefited because a lot of imports and all have gone out, and India has become slightly more protectionist, to use that word, in steel and everything. We're not in those categories, so we see the risk even lesser. I think at the moment in the building metal category, it's not heavily regulated anyway, and it's not. So in that sense, unless something macroeconomically changes where you have a lot of imports suddenly becoming cheaper, I don't see a huge risk there. I think the big risk, not regulatory, but big risk, that macro risk that we see is construction spend slowing down. Right. So, and we don't see it happening right now because we think the government will continue to spend on construction. But I think that is a key challenge or risk that we run, because we are seeing some slowdown in consumer across the group, right? Every consumer company in India is sort of not, whether it's paint companies or it's sort of fashion companies, there's this slowdown being witnessed, right? We are not into a lot of consumer except paint. So what I think the big thing that we are lucky with is that we've always started B2B first. A lot of our revenues today, more than almost 80%, still comes from a lot of real estate and infra spend. Real estate, a lot of bookings have happened last few years. A lot of execution is pending. So next 3-4 years, there's a clear path to execution there. I think infra, I think macroeconomically, the only risk we run is infra spending slowing down. We don't see it happening. A lot of airport tenders have gone out, construction has started. So we don't see why it will be a slowdown. But I think that's the only risk that typically is macroeconomic risk that we see.
Got it. Any other external challenges that you are sort of facing today?
Not right now. I think more challenges. I think the key internal challenge that we need to focus on, that we are focusing on, is how to ensure cross-sell upsell. I think that's the key category we want to focus on.
Got it. And since you were talking about imports and stuff like that, so from a geo standpoint, are you looking at sort of expanding beyond?
So we have expanded to certain countries where we source from there, or put a manufacturing there. To build markets there, we've not done it. I think there's enough opportunity in India, and most countries that we will go to will be, I mean, there are states in India we've not fully got into, right? And that market will be equivalent to that market. For example, if I want to go, if I want to tomorrow go to a smaller Asian country, the market size there can be compensated by going deeper into a state in India. So for me, I think what is more critical is that I would rather prefer to, my demand side, I'm only focusing on India, except where I'm exporting tiles and all, which is still manufactured in India, sold abroad. But on the supply side, we have set up some manufacturing globally for sourcing products. But again, focus here is the Indian market. We are not too focused on geographical.
And that's likely to stay that way for the next
few years, yes, at least.
All right. Also, it was very intriguing to see, and since you spoke about building trust earlier, I mean the lineup of your key management personnel across the group, a lot of them coming from respective backgrounds, stalwarts in their own rights.
Of course, yes.
So is the trust building one of the key sort of driving factors there, or is there something
I think there's a learning curve also in this industry. I think there are a couple of things that we did early on, very specific, which we realized that, look, at least in manufacturing, it would be better to go with people who have vintage in building manufacturing ecosystems. In manufacturing, ensuring the right cost, ensuring the right quality. It Yes, you can learn it, and yes, there are newer people who can learn it, but it helps if that learning curve is not there, because it's a very steep curve. On sales, supply chain, I think that's where we see new we see young people coming in. We've gotten people from across industries, and we've tried to solve those problems: marketing, sales. But manufacturing, pure play, industry level dynamics, I think it's better to get someone who has the vintage and build that company around. And that's where, and because manufacturing is also complex in the sense, me and Aditya cannot get expertise around 20 manufacturing industries, right? From paint to tiles to concrete. So you need that core manufacturing focus. And typically what we've also found is people who spend 20 years in the industry are also very focused on that particular industry itself. A lot sometimes when you hire generalists or someone new, they also have this. People may not want to remain in that industry for too long. This is not a great industry to work in. Sometimes it doesn't attract the best of talents, building materials in that sense, because it is not very. It's a very boring industry also, right? People, because effectively, if at end of the day you're not working in an industry that's going to grab headlines every day. So I think when you hire new talent, there's also the problem that people want to shift towards more flashy industries. And then, so when you can't have regular churn in your manufacturing, because so I think there we focus on leadership who's very clear in what they are building, very clear in their career, who've done it before, and who are very focused on working in that industry.
Got it.
Yeah.
And what's the sort of story behind the name Hella? It's also
No,
something of
Hella,
interest.
we just saw. So the brand was Infra.Market. Hella, I think me and Aditya was watching a movie, and was, I think, Troy's sister. Then we decided to just, we were filling up the MCF form, we used that name. I think at that time at least, it wasn't to focus Hella. Hence the brand doesn't include Hella, but I think that was just a name that we saw a movie and decided to put the name in. Yeah. Didn't think we'll have to explain that, or sort of it'll become large enough to explain. So didn't bother too much at that time.
So from a sustainability point of view, if you can sort of throw some light on what as a group you are doing, A, and B, because some parts of this particular industry have some environmental impact from that point of view. So on that side of things, what are some of the steps you are taking to?
So I think one is our focus is very much on categories where we want to sort of usher in categories where the environmental impact is lessened in construction. For example, AAC blocks. We are today India's largest AAC block manufacturer. It is used in walling when you create walls, and it replaces bricks. Now, bricks are extremely environmental unfriendly, but it's still used majorly in construction in India. Globally, everyone has shifted towards blocks and panels. They used waste materials. We use a lot of waste, steel plant waste and power plant waste to manufacture these product categories. We are trying to ensure that majority of construction that happens, we use these categories for the construction products. The industry is slowly adopting it. We are today, like I said, largest player with 9 factories across India. We're looking to put up some more and eventually sort of scale it up. So that's how. So again, for example, steel manufacturing. We don't do iron ore to steel. We instead use steel scrap to ensure that, again, we are trying to recycling steel scrap and manufacture steel instead of going entirely sort of, again, and leading to environmental impact. In tiles and all. So we've moved away from natural marbles, natural stone to artificial, which has a much lesser environmental impact. Unlike products like, say, marble, granite, which are natural, which require mining and all, we are moving towards product categories. We are at least promoting categories and putting up manufacturing where the environmental impact is less. In something like concrete, we use a lot of slag, which is produced as waste material from steel, or fly ash, which is from power plants, to manufacture, reduce cement usage. So we're trying to do across industry whatever we can do from sustainability point of view. Another key focus area for us in sustainability is to ensure more women participation in construction. It's one of the sectors which is least represented by women workforce, right? So we run manufacturing units in building materials. One of them, I think, is in Pune that we own, which are 100% women operated. The idea is to give them dedicated workspace, in building material construction, which can see more women participation. We also have a continuing continuing sort of focus on ensuring that we employ the differently abled in our workforce. We are working towards that, and one of our key CSR initiatives that over the last few years has been to educate one, train construction labor and provide for education of construction labor children, and we've been doing that over the last few years. One new activity that we're now taking up is we want to restore older buildings or older historical buildings in construction and focus on that and how we can restore them for future generations. That's another thing that we are very focused on, because we realize that if you look at our office around, one of the key focus areas, we celebrate the great constructions of India, whether it's the Red Fort or whether it's Hawa Mahal. Some of the greatest constructions in India happened were around this space, right? So we want to celebrate those events. So we want to now there are multiple, we believe, monuments in India where we can work towards and restore those monuments. So we're working towards that also to sort of work. So those are areas that we keep working on across sustainability, across this.
Got it. You were talking about the office. Just having a chat with my team. So I assume that most of what we are seeing in this particular room
would be used.
Would be all products.
Would
You'll have it no other way.
It would have it no other way.
Right. And just one final thing on your sort of personal journey. Who have been your sort of mentors or advisors over the years? Somebody, or it may not be a person, or something that you read, or
so I've read. So obviously you read a lot. I think there's not one, but you pick up snippets across, right? I think in mentor sort of way, look, we've everyone you work with, you pick up from them. I think some of the key people who've sort of supported us, who've post this is obviously our first investor, Prashant. Prashant Prakash was the first guy, and I think in venture capital terms, nobody understood construction at that time, and he was the only guy who understood. I think, and so he is someone I really I've looked up to over the years. Sort of when we are building this, taken insights, because he gives a sort of he's busy, but whenever we get time to meet him, he sort of gives. He's been someone. Apart from that, look, multiple people across the journey. I can't pick one, but I think people, whether it's my school, whether it's college. See, when I came to Bombay was the first time I understood entrepreneurship. The first company I worked with. I think everywhere we've had people who sort of influenced me in some way or other. To pick one and say, okay, this person influenced me the most, no, I would say no. But maybe some of the India's large industrialists. I mean, when you look at when you read about them, you read the Ambuja story. This book I read recently. It's on how entire the entire Ambuja empire got built. Such a short period of time. You look at what great industrialists like Kumar Mangalam Birla is doing. Look at how his ability to go across industries. Right. I mean, we are in a particular industry. I mean, look at how Gautam Adani is building. The kind of, for a single generational, first generation entrepreneur, right. For someone who's in a particular industry, multi-product, we've seen the complexity. And then you compare with someone like them who've done multi-industries, right. multi-country geographical, you understand, I think, so we are looking, these are some of the, at least the Indian industrialists in the current crop that I love listening to, whether it's a podcast of theirs or an interview of theirs. Those are the guys that I typically follow. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much, Souvik. It was lovely talking to you.
Lovely talking
and
to you.
And getting to know more Infra.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks.